Van de meer zeggen ja, zitten we rekenen. Så det är en del med basgrupp arkitekter. Så att kanske PS igår var Kosovo Architecture Platform. Možný platform pro artistů architekta. Ideja družbe. Tak način da izatakaст просвітлити при креативності, що за друг буде на висок пригадує у платформу ждало. Kosovo важно не прямо говорити. Що земля, які випадок класичний функцій, такі моменти, що буде публічна тренінг, інтересанти, всі експеріменти на добрі. Drugi ću Arquitectura Subalterna, ela procura Vitória, José, tu, ela, José, the floor is yours. Thank
you very much. Thank you, Noli. Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for coming. First of all, I would like to thank the Kosovo Architecture Foundation and Future Architecture Platform for inviting us to share our ideas about the space, architecture, and urban space. Well, our practice was formed in the late 2015 with the aim of promoting a new understanding of the space beyond the idea of the beauty and the ugliness of the architectural object, which we no longer trust in. We are more interested in the relationship between the bodies. I think that this is the key. This is the key for understanding the spatial events and the architectural phenomenon of today. We have tried to verify that hypothesis and situation through several theoretical, speculative, and constructive projects, like all that you can see here. This is our website. In all these projects, we try to visualize the spatial affections and the real needs of the bodies in space. Here, you can see the list of the events where we have been taking part through this year, 2017, like the Oslo Architecture Triennale, or the 2016 Venice Biennale, where we were selected by the unfinished competition organized by the Spanish Pavilion, and finally the Spanish Pavilion where we took part was awarded with the Golden Lion. Here you have the index of today's lecture. We are going to explain 6 case studies that have been developed this year in an international context. From Pruitt-Igoe in the United States, Modular Basal Children, which is a theoretical critique, Madrid Kinky, that is an aesthetic research project in the outskirts of the Spanish capital, Clichy Susbois in the periphery of Paris, Tensta in Stockholm, and our beloved workshop, Techno-Rebel Bodies, that we have been developed this week with the help of lovely participants. So first of all, despite we were born in 2015, we have to look back to understand the origin of our ideas about the space and the architecture. I would like you to show a short clip of video of 1972 when a powerful event took place. You have seen a clip of the demolition of Pudago development. Regarding this event, the architect Charles Deng announced in 1972 the end of modernism. And why we think that it's so important to understand Pudago case? That's because we think that it's an excellent case to understand the mistakes of an excess of rationalisms in human design and how a development like that could fail. Well, Pudago was the start project of modern movement in St. Louis, Missouri. It has 33 11-story blocks that host more than 50,000 people. But what it's really important to understand is that African American people were completely segregated from white people. Black people lived in the private homes that they were named after this pilot, and white people are meant to live in more luxury homes named after a white congressman, William L. Igo. Apart from the low quality construction, the cheap materials, and the poor design, the main problem was the high rate crime, affecting the quality of life and making it almost impossible to live there. From our point of view, from the point of view of Arquitectura Subalterna, this happened due to the enormous distance between the built environment and the real needs of the inhabitants. Believing that rationalism and progress are synonyms, the architects ignore that economic and social problems of the real user of the buildings they are designing. The international style and the modern movement itself are ideologies, and ideologies that try to reduce the diversity and complexity of human behavior, human activities, and human identities into a simple solution, into a final product, as Le Corbusier did with his most famous icon, Le Bourbon.
So now I'm going to present our project Modulus Bastard Children. We have been developing it for the whole time we've been together. So this is a project that is a critique to modern movement rationalism. We think that model bastard children are sensible to the real needs of the inhabitants that are living in these blocks of the modern movement. From Arquitectura Subalterna, we think the space not like the modular as a representation of patterns and behaviors. We believe in the particularities of the bodies that inhabit the space. As Spinoza said, nobody knows what a body can do. And we take this as an opportunity to understand how people move in these blocks, how people move in these cities. Now in 2017, modulus bastard children are living in modern blocks and cities designed for our parents and even our grandparents, not for the modern life. So they don't understand blocks from the rationalism in this time. They understand it from sensitive dimensions. Arquitectura Subalterna is not going to understand these spaces from the objects. We are going to understand these spaces through the bodies, actions, identities, and sensations of their inhabitants. These bodies, we think, are more concentrated in the peripheries. We think that everything happens in peripheries because they are, from our point of view, the laboratory of the first century cities. To be honest, for us, nothing happens in the city center. We think that's a space for star architects that build projects understood from the surfaces and like only objects. But the periphery is not only a geographic site, it's full of people that are far from the late capitalism way of life. So now, we are going to present 3 case studies after having described all these concepts. And these case studies have helped us to understand how bodies use the space and try to design cities in a way that goes beyond the corporate city or the participatory city that is so trendy right now. The first one is the periphery of Madrid, this one, Barrio La Concepción. We try to find a solution to the problems that are that were in the decade of 1960s, but avoiding demolition. The second one is Pichi-sur-Bois, which is in the periphery of Madrid. Paris. Sorry. It's a series of modern blocks, and we try to understand them not only for the shape of the blocks, but from the riots that occurred in the streets in 2005. And finally, in the third position is Tensta, which is also a neighborhood in the outskirts of Stockholm. And we try to understand them not from the shapes of the blocks, but from the perspective of a black rapper that inhabits those blocks. We have elaborated a diagram that connects the traditional ways to call these things to, or way to understand them. For example, for us, urbanism means bodies and actions through the riots. Communal spaces means relations and affects, and housing, finally, for us, are identities and aesthetics. So the first case study is Madrid. We start we want to put this in a context. After the Spanish Civil War that finished in 1939, there was a social housing crisis because there were a lot of movements from the rural areas to the city center, and this caused these illegal settlements. So the government said, okay, we should do a resettlement plan, and that's why they expanded the limits of the cities. This plan was based on the European architecture of that time, not only in a typological way, but also in a formal way. And this forgot completely about the existential minimums and social welfare. So we found in this huge block, in a very famous neighborhood of Madrid called Barrio La Concepción, a very good example of social system and urban space of modernity. But the inhabitants were not as they had expected. They were not the middle-class people. They were a new social archetype. These flats were inhabited by the lovers of the businessmen that were living in the city center and bought these flats to be closer to their lovers. They were prostitutes, like independent prostitutes that received their clients in their own houses, and also professionals with small businesses that wanted to develop them and intended to move into the city center, but they never did. So this, 20 years later, showed how the problems were so evident. Marginality, unemployment, drugs, delinquency became the definition of the new archetype, kinky, which is a young criminal, we call it like that. So this new archetype was very important for the Spanish cinema. we can see all these series B movies that became very important because these criminals started to be mass idols. It promoted new aesthetics and sensitivities far from the social patterns of that time. For example, this is from Deprisa. There were other movies like What Have I Done to Deserve This from Pedro Almodóvar. They tell us stories of people that inhabit this block, and above all, their lack of expectations in life. So, Arquitectura Subalterna have studied the cinematographic narrations, taking advantage of their realistic character. We've done spatial cartographies in order to try to understand how these people lived and inhabit that block. This was in order to design strategies beyond demolition and far from the forms and procedures of the normal refurbishment.
Okay. As we said before, we are going to understand urbanism through the relations of bodies into space. And probably the riot and the protests have been in the last years the best way to know how urbanism is and how it will be the city in the future. Riot is one of the most interesting models of contemporary architecture because it is a spatial action where there is an intense relation between bodies and the buildings. In fact, we can assure that concepts as participation are closer to the riot than the soft policies of participation that some institutions created, which is synonymous with selecting the color of a facade or writing in paper some ideas from the inhabitants to rebuild their district. We do believe in participation in a more active way. In ancient Greece, Aristotle wrote a book called Constitution of the Athenians, where he made reference to one law that said, if there are disturbs or riots in the city, and you do not take part in any of them, you won't be considered a citizen. In a similar way, we propose an idea of active citizen, a citizen that is not alienated because of the policies, but rather takes part in the city events. So we come back to Clichy-sous-Bois. This is a Clichy-sous-Bois image. It was designed by Bernard Serhaus, a disciple of Le Corbusier. And here it is interesting to compare a plan of the modern movement buildings, of how is represented this space with objects and measures, in opposition to this cartography that shows a riot. You can see how the space is more complex when the relations and the bodies are described. Because as French philosopher Gilles Deleuze says, a body is not defined by his substance, his matter, but rather for its relations with other bodies. In these screenshots of the same riot scene, we want to promote the bodies in movement as the new icon of urbanism, in opposition to the Kevin Lynch idea of static objects and monuments. We propose an understanding of urbanism of the city more dynamic. So, due to minimal space of housing and overcrowded flats, so many times bodies establish relations and affects outside the housing but inside the building. This district of Clichy-sous-Bois is on the periphery and does not have easy public transport connection with the city center or leisure area, and in consequence, all these activities takes place here, in the communal space. In this perspective plan, you can see how this space, designed without any special program, has a lot of activity. The result is a wide range of subaltern spatial activities. In the north entrance, you can see a meeting point around the handrail. At the south, you can see the main entrance with a sofa, which is always occupied by someone who is watching who enters in the building. It's a position of power. And inside you can see the drug dealer who used to be close to the staircase, so in this way police doesn't watch him from outside. Maybe this section will help you to understand better the space, the disposition of the bodies in this space. You can see two people with underground aesthetics on the sofa and the drug dealer at the bottom. But more than these illegal actions, we can see other kind of situations. You can see a couple laying with their babies because they don't have enough space at home. You can see a young man working out under the staircase because he don't have a gym close to his home, or they can pay it. And finally, the third case study, that is Tensta, a district in the outskirts of Estocolm. Here we are going to focus in a minor architecture, in the small case, because in these minor aesthetics and identities are the key to understand the real needs of these inhabitants that are reflected in the city. Tensta Housing Million Program was designed to accommodate the 1970s Swedish family stereotype, consisting in 4 white, blue-eyed and blonde-haired individuals, father, mother, son and daughter, who rejected any approach that deviates from the norm. Faced with these situations, with these fictitious and archaic domesticities, there is Adam House. It's a case of daily resistance, reflecting a much more complex way of living, with individual and extremely real. Now I'm going to show you how Adam Tensta shows his home.
This is where I live anyway. This kitchen, nothing fancy, just stripped down, stylish. Looks like my place. It's a box studies for the kitchen. Adam. See? Who's that? Adam. That's my brother. Oh, that's cool. Oh my God. Legendary.
So, this is Adam Tensta house. Adam is a famous black rapper living in a modern movement building. He won the Grammy for the best hip hop album in 2008. And it is quite interesting because when Tensta shows his homes, he doesn't talk about the space. He doesn't talk about how the light enters through the window. He doesn't talk about the play of volumes brought together into light. No, he talks about his memories, his photographs, his video games, and he also shows the rubbish in the kitchen or the shower curtain. He doesn't have so many white walls because he has done a graffiti. He shows an aesthetic of the house, an aesthetic that represents his identity. In opposition, the housing where he lived in Tensta was designed through an idea of domesticity, linked with the late order of rationalism. And as you can see in this promotional image, of the housing program, the woman is not understood as a body, but rather an object who is situated in the kitchen as a mannequin, who represents this kind of mythology. But everything has changed in 2017. Tensta is no longer a place full of appearance. Tensta is defined by the harsh reality of its inhabitants. And Tensta is the model who represents this new way of relation with the space where the building is merely a container without not so much interest, and the objects, skins, memories, and aesthetics become the center of the spatial understanding. In this cartography, we have tried to represent a modern movement house through these feelings and emotional objects. As you can see, an atmosphere far removed from the white walls of a modern movement building. You can see a graffiti in the wall, the steam in the bathroom, or the photograph hanging on the fridge. These are the real spatial elements. In addition, Tensta is full of immigrants, and they use the skins to cover the surface. It is a way of appropriation, of belonging to the space. As the philosopher Paul Valéry says, the deepest is the skin. Thereby, they project their identity to the space, and in the second category you could see how immaterial things, as the smell of Oriental or African food, or the use of incense, is visualized. In conclusion, with these 3 case studies, we have tried to propose new ways to understanding the city beyond modern movement or soft participations, to pay attention to the new identities, feelings, and underground aesthetics that are flowering in the periphery of the cities. We think these actions will be the future of the city, and we must be sensitive to them. Now we are going to show you a short video that shows the Parisian district of Vichy-sur-Bois in the early 70s, and nowadays to assess how the city has changed.
Okay, and in this lecture we want to show you the workshop that we have developed here the whole week in the Kosovo Museum. And we have finished today, maybe like 3 hours ago, so this is a premiere. So I hope you like it. The name of the workshop is Techno-Rebel Bodies. It's a workshop that tries to promote a speculative idea about how is going to be the future of the architecture in a place like Kosovo through an installation where you can enter and feel the space, and feel the sensation of the space of a techno party. So, when we are going to start from the beginning, okay? Because when Future Architecture Platform Kosovo Architecture Festival say to us that maybe we can run a workshop here in Pristina. To be honest, we have no any idea about the architecture in Pristina and in Kosovo, so we start to make a research about the architecture here in Kosovo, Pristina, etc. And we discovered this building that is in the red part of the photo, that is the Ninja Tower. And this building is very important for us, for the different outlook of the workshop. And we are going to try why it's important for us, this building, and why it's important the workshop that we have here. If we try to analyze the building, this is the Pristina building, and we see at the rooftop, we can see there the Vinsawa. The Vinsawa is a building built by Le Corbusier in 1929. If we compare the image, we can see that the shape is more or less. The windows, there is a window as well in most of them. So it's a reference. Maybe we can say that the modern movement is in this brutalist building. But if we move to 2005, the Relinia Tower was remodeled and rejecting the opinion of some architect from Pristina and some architect, they covered the surface, the facade of the building with a shiny surface, with mirror. And again, a friend emerged. In this case, it's Mies van der Rohe. As you can see there, it's Mies van der Rohe, close to the actual drag buildings. And we can compare again how similar is this kind of building and this kind of building. So why we made this comparison? Because it's a trick to try to solve how Kosovo architecture and Pristina architecture, from our point of view, is losing the identity because it's focused more in international style, as the word international is not specific. So we think that in the workshop we try to promote what is going to be a future of the architecture in Kosovo, in Pristina. We think that we have to look for a new, it's not a new, it's to recover the identity of the country. And we throw this kind of question, like for example, how is the space understood by Kosovo? Or what is the state of Kosovo? If we want to give an answer to this question, we have to realize that Pristina, Kosovo, is one of the youngest population in Europe. So we have to be very sensitive to these young people that is going to be the future of Kosovo. And we have to offer them new, fresh and powerful narratives. If we come back to Relinia space, in the basement, it's an amazing space. We were there at the beginning of the week and it's empty. You can see this the space is empty. In this space were printed the Relinia newspaper as well some books. Nowadays it's empty, but Hapesira company organized from time to time a kind of techno parties that is very interesting for us because the participants of these parties are people from 18 to 30 years old. What is the future of Kosovo? So the future of Kosovo is using this space and they are promoting this kind of spatiality. As you can see, it's a spatiality where appears lights, bodies, sounds. It's important. And as well, the music. You know that during Tito era, here was promoted this new music, like for example techno, but that it was like very modern to make techno. But nowadays, Kosovo techno music is one of the most recognized sounds in the world. So we think that it's a very good example to take it, and let's go to think how is the spatiality, how is the space in a techno party. This is the target of the workshop. And why techno? Because Alvin Toffler book, The Third Wave, he used the word techno-rebels. And what is a techno-rebels? Alvin gave this definition. Techno-rebels are the bodies defined by decentralization, desmassification, and personification. So techno-rebel bodies don't understand spatial patterns. Like for example, the models that we saw before. They are guided by sensations, emotion, erotics, these immaterial sensations. They are very important for us, Arquitectura Subalterna, and for the workshop. So we have tried in the workshop to give answers to these questions. We have a lot more, but maybe that is the more important. For us, a very architectural question. How is the space in a techno party? What kinds of light are used that were like if you were thinking? How does specific sense get a stand because of high music volume? how do the color and the darkness affect your body? What aesthetics are linked to techno music? How are the clothes that match with this aesthetic? Or how could space be understood? So, their effects. So, to try to answer this question, we have made two constructions. One, a cartography, and two, an installation. First one, the cartography. For us, for Arquitectura Subalterna, cartography is a very powerful tool. Maybe we can use some synonyms, like for example, map, diagram, but we like this word cartography. For us, cartography is a very powerful tool, as I say, and in this case, we say the first day to the participant, okay, how can we represent a space that is focused on immaterial sensations? And we did a little bit of activity, and we gave to them two short videos about two scenes of movies where there were a relation between bodies, music, space. I show you the videos, the reference for the participants. There is no video, okay. So, we gave to them two videos, okay. Later you are going to see the results. And as well, reference, okay. Reference of cartographies. We love this reference. This is Bernard Schumi, Parc de la Villette. It's a park art that made Bernard Schumi in Paris. If you see the image, you can see how Bernard Schumi represents the space. He made that part, but it's not only representing the objects, the architecture. For him, it's very important with the events. You can see the photograph, and as well the movement of the bodies in the park, the relationship between the events. Bernard Schumi say that without events, there is no architecture. So it's important as well to realize that architecture is more than the objects. Here is one of the pages of probably the most successful book of Bernard Schumi, that is Manhattan Transcripts. We really do this book because Schumi tried to say, okay, Manhattan, skyscrapers, very big tower, but as well there are events. So we are going to try to translate Manhattan in events where the bodies are the main character and not the building. And this one is our favorite. Yes, this is a cartography of Walter Marchetti, an Italian artist. This is the movement of a fly in a window. So you can see the different times and the different position of the fly in the window. So it's very important to remember this kind of person in the world that say, okay, I'm very interested in how a fly moves in my windows, because as well it's an spatial element. So with this reference, we have here the result of the cartography of our participants. This one, for example, for Laura Lesa. We have in the first line different screenshots of this party. In the second one, it's like a situation. We understand the situation. Okay, we are going to situate. So we are going to select what is important in each space. So in this first image is important the bodies, but as well the clothing. In the second one, this exchange safe and a mirror that is broken. The third one, the color, the light. The fourth one, these guys that have no body, only because they are like white, they only have clothing. And the third line, the cartography, the movement of the bodies in space. So really interesting. The second one is by Lacan. It's more or less the same situation. The first line, the screenshot. The second one, the situation. In this case, it's more focused on the bodies, how the bodies interact with the space. And the third one, this movement of bodies in the space. This from Intelezza and Innocetta. It's really nice because it's another kind of cartography, because they select a situation and they give like an icon to understand the space. Really nice. And this is the last one by Allo, where highlight in a very precise way the bodies. Okay, the bodies. You can see in the first line the result of the movement of these bodies and the importance of these bodies in the space. And the second one, the final one, is the installation that we have made. The installation has made have been the main target of the project and of the workshop, because it's a space where you can enter and feel in your own body the sensation and the spatiality of a techno party. This is the video of the reference. Here is the pavilion, some technical drawing. It's a timber structure, it's a triangle, a self-supporting structure, and we cover with a very thin skin, and it's wonderful. We are going to see photos about it. So the floor plan is a plan, this is a main elevation, some connection plates, and the slope view of the pavilion. And here are some photos of the construction process. The first one focused more on the structure, in the structures. Here the second one part where it was more focused in the schemes. And yesterday we finished it, and this is the installation. But for us it's very important to understand the installation during two moments at the day. One moment is when there is sun, and you can see some shadows. The most important for us, and the other one is the night, but the most important for us is this very nice photo, and very important as well. These are the guys, and all of us as well, touching the skin, and it's like a metaphor about how will be the architecture, because the architectures and the space and the facade really can understand the bodies. So take the shape of the bodies. It's like you are making a very good action in architecture, because the body wing to the object, the body wing to the space. I love this image, like a metaphor, of course. And this is a more detailed image of the two houses that is very nice as well. And this is at night, the pavilion. As you can see, it's totally different, the spatiality. It was yesterday at night. I'm going to show you more photos. Because here we are talking about architecture, but architecture with a concept that we are going to show you right now that are very important for us. So we think with this kind of installation is a easy peasy, and we are working hard with all the participants, but we are talking about some concepts that architecture probably in the last time has forgotten. And for example, has forgotten or is not interested in them. Like for example, lightness, sensations, skins, movement, effects, or bodies. And as well yesterday, we recorded a video, and I'm going to show you to see how is the spatiality of this object. So tomorrow, maybe we are going to have a party in the installation. We don't know. I hope it. So So thank you very much to all participants of the workshop, brilliant participants, and the support team of Future Architecture, of course the Festival of Architecture here in Pristina, all the volunteers, of course. So thank you very much for your